The house smelled like lemon oil and old money. That's what Celeste noticed first, every morning at 6:15, when she let herself in through the service entrance. The scent clung to the mahogany panels in the hallway, to the silk curtains in the drawing room, to the leather spines of books no one read. It was the smell of things kept pristine, not because they were loved, but because they were owned. She'd been cleaning Dominic Marchetti's estate for 11 months, long enough to know which floorboards creaked, long enough to memorize the rhythm of his footsteps, heavy on the stairs, deliberate in the corridors, long enough to understand that invisibility was the most valuable skill she possessed. The Marchetti house sat at the edge of the city like a beautiful lie. All white stone and iron gates, rose gardens that bloomed in perfect rows, windows that caught the morning light and held it like a secret. From the street, it looked like inheritance, old money, respectability wrapped in ivy and tradition. Celeste knew better. She'd seen the men who visited after dark, the ones who didn't knock, who let themselves in through the back, who left before dawn with briefcases and expressions carved from granite. She'd emptied ashtrays that smelled like imported cigars and anxiety. She'd scrubbed wine stains from Persian rugs, found $100 bills folded into couch cushions, noticed the way certain rooms were always locked. But she never asked questions. Questions were expensive. People disappeared. Her daughter Maya was 7 years old and brilliant. Piano lessons twice a week. A good school in a safe neighborhood. Dance recitals where Celeste sat in the back row and cried because her baby moved like music made visible. Everything Celeste did, every floor she mopped, every silence she swallowed, was for Maya. That morning, she arrived to find Dominic's office door ajar. It was never ajar. The office occupied the entire east wing of the second floor. Dark wood, darker windows, the kind of room that absorbed light and sound and gave nothing back. Celeste cleaned it every Tuesday and Friday, but only when Dominic was out. He'd leave a key on the kitchen counter with a note, "Office today, 2 hours," and she'd work quickly, efficiently, touching nothing that didn't need touching. But today was Wednesday, and the door was open. She stood in the hallway, cleaning supplies balanced on one hip, listening. The house was silent. Dominic's Maserati wasn't in the driveway. His bodyguard, Luca, the quiet one with eyes like glass, was gone too. The chef didn't come on Wednesdays. The gardener worked outside. She was alone. Celeste told herself to walk away, to close the door and pretend she'd never seen it open. But something pulled her forward. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the exhaustion of always being careful, always being small. Maybe just the human need to see what you're not supposed to see. The office was exactly as she remembered it. Massive desk, black leather chair, bookshelves filled with legal volumes and first editions. A globe made of lapis lazuli. Framed photographs of Dominic shaking hands with men in expensive suits. Politicians, she assumed, or criminals, or both. The line between them had always seemed thin. She moved to the desk, ran her cloth over the surface, careful not to disturb the papers arranged in neat stacks. Invoices, she guessed, contracts. The machinery of legitimate business concealing whatever darkness funded this house. That's when she saw the drawer. The bottom right drawer, the one that was always locked, was open just a crack, less than an inch, barely visible unless you were standing exactly where she was, at exactly this angle, with the morning light cutting across the desk just so. Her pulse kicked against her ribs. She should close it, walk away, finish her work and go home to Maya, to safety, to the life she'd built from minimum wage and silence. Instead, she pulled the drawer open. Inside, a single manila folder, unmarked, heavy with documents. She lifted it carefully, as if it might explode, set it on the desk, opened it. The first page was a photograph, black and white, grainy, the kind taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. It showed a woman leaving a courthouse, mid-30s, black, elegant in a way that suggested power earned, not inherited. Celeste recognized her immediately. District Attorney Simone Pierce, the woman who'd been all over the news for the past 6 months. The prosecutor taking down organized crime families with surgical precision. 3 major convictions in 8 months. The papers called her untouchable, incorruptible, the kind of person who made enemies of men who considered murder a business expense. Celeste's hands trembled as she turned the page. More photographs. Simone entering her apartment building. Simone at a cafe with colleagues. Simone picking up her son from school. A little boy with her smile, maybe 9 years old, wearing a backpack covered in superhero patches. Then, surveillance logs, dates, times, locations, every movement cataloged with clinical precision. Then, floor plans. Simone's apartment, her office, the courthouse. Then, something that made Celeste's stomach turn to ice. A handwritten note in elegant script. October 18th, 7:15 a.m., school drop-off, Cafe Morelli. Tuesday and Thursday pattern, minimal security. Soft target. Today was October 15th. 3 days. Celeste's vision narrowed. The room felt smaller, airless. She knew what she was holding. Not just surveillance, not just obsession. A hit plan. They were going to kill Simone Pierce, and they were going to do it in 3 days in front of her child at a cafe where she felt safe. Celeste closed the folder with shaking hands, put it back exactly as she'd found it, closed the drawer until it sat at the same angle, opened just a crack, barely visible. She picked up her cleaning supplies and walked out of the office. Her legs felt like water. Her heart hammered so loud she was certain someone would hear it, would know, would appear in the hallway with a gun and a solution to the problem she'd just become. But the house remained silent. She finished her shift on autopilot, vacuumed the living room, polished the mirrors, wiped down the kitchen counters until they gleamed. Her hands moved through the familiar motions while her mind raced through scenarios, each one worse than the last. If she went to the police, they'd ask how she knew. She'd have to admit to snooping, to violating the trust of a man who paid her well to be invisible. They'd investigate, her name would surface, and then Dominic would know. Men like Dominic didn't forgive, they didn't forget, they corrected problems, and she would become a problem. But if she said nothing, Simone Pierce would die. A woman who was somebody's mother, somebody's daughter. A woman trying to do something right in a city that punished righteousness. And Celeste would have known, would have had the chance to stop it, would have chosen her own safety over someone else's life. She thought of Maya, the way she laughed when Celeste picked her up from school, the weight of her small hand in hers, the absolute trust in her eyes. The future Celeste was building for her, brick by careful brick. If Celeste died, what happened to Maya? She left the Marchetti estate at 2:30, exactly on schedule. Dominic's car pulled into the driveway as she was walking to the bus stop. He waved, she waved back, smiled the smile she'd perfected, pleasant, forgettable, the smile of someone who existed only to make his life easier. He never suspected that she'd just seen his plan to commit murder. That night, Celeste didn't sleep. She lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, listening to Maya's soft breathing from the bedroom they shared. The city hummed beyond the window, sirens and distant music, the sound of life continuing, indifferent to the weight pressing against her chest. She thought about her mother, dead 3 years now. The woman who'd cleaned houses too, who'd taught Celeste that survival meant knowing when to look and when to turn away, who'd said, with a tiredness that went bone deep, "Baby, the world doesn't reward black women for being heroes. It buries us for trying." But her mother had also taught her to pray, to believe that some things mattered more than safety. By dawn, Celeste had made her decision. She was going to tell someone, somehow, carefully. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just chosen the moment that would divide her life into before and after, the moment she stopped being invisible. The problem with becoming visible is that you can't control who sees you. Celeste spent Thursday morning researching, not at home. She wasn't stupid enough to leave a digital trail on her own devices. Instead, she took Maya to the library after school, settled her daughter at a table with homework and colored pencils, and found a public computer in the back corner where no one would notice her. She searched for how to report crime anonymously, found pages about tip lines, witness protection, ways to contact law enforcement without leaving your name. But every article came with warnings. Anonymous tips still required information, details, and details could be traced back to their source. She thought about calling from a payphone, but did those even exist anymore? She thought about mailing a letter, but what if they dusted it for prints? She thought about telling a priest, invoking confession's sacred privacy, but she wasn't Catholic and didn't know if it worked that way. Every solution felt like a door that might swing back and crush her. That evening, after putting Maya to bed, Celeste did something she'd avoided for 11 months. She looked up Dominic Marchetti online. The official story was pristine: real estate developer, philanthropist, donated to children's hospitals and scholarship funds. Photographs of him at charity galas, shaking hands with the mayor, cutting ribbons at community centers. His smile was perfect, warm but not too warm, confident but not arrogant. The unofficial story lived in forums and Reddit threads and true crime blogs. Whispers about connections to the Marchetti crime family, one of the oldest in the city. Money laundering through construction projects. Restaurants that existed only on paper. Witnesses who recanted testimony or disappeared entirely. Nothing proven, nothing charged. Just smoke. And the certainty that where there's this much smoke, fire is inevitable. She found photographs of him younger, standing beside his father, Salvatore Marchetti, whose obituary 5 years ago had been suspiciously brief. No cause of death listed, just surrounded by family and a pillar of the community. She found a grainy video from a news report, footage of federal agents raiding a warehouse allegedly connected to the family. The case had fallen apart, evidence contaminated, witnesses suddenly developing amnesia. And she found one article, buried in a small alternative newspaper's archive, about a journalist named Marcus Webb, who'd been investigating the Marchettis. He'd published 2 exposés, methodical and well-sourced, laying out financial connections that suggested organized crime. 6 weeks after the second article, Marcus Webb died in a hit-and-run. The driver was never found. The case went cold. Celeste closed the laptop. Her hands were shaking again. This was the man whose house she cleaned, whose orange juice she bought, whose sheets she changed. This was the man whose secret she now carried. Friday morning, she returned to the Marchetti estate. The routine was the same. Arrive at 6:15, let herself in, start with the bedrooms on the 3rd floor, and work her way down. She moved through the familiar motions, but everything felt different now. The house wasn't just beautiful anymore. It was a trap disguised as elegance. She avoided the office, told herself she'd done enough damage already. But at 10:30, when she was dusting the 2nd floor hallway, she heard voices. Dominic's office door was closed, but not locked, and sound traveled differently in old houses, through heating vents, along floorboards, absorbed and amplified by wood and plaster in unpredictable ways. She shouldn't listen, shouldn't risk it. She pressed her ear against the wall. "Pierce is the priority," Dominic's voice, calm and businesslike. "She's got the Carlotti trial next month. 3 of our associates are on the witness list." Another voice, rougher. "Luca, maybe? Timing? Tuesday morning, make it look random. Wrong place, wrong time. The kid's a complication, but unavoidable. Collateral happens." The mother? "After. Give it a week, then an accident. Something clean. We don't need heat." Celeste's blood turned to slush. They weren't just planning to kill Simone Pierce. They were planning to kill her in front of her child. And then, a week later, to kill someone else. Simone's mother, maybe. Anyone who might push for justice, ask too many questions. "What about the cleanup?" Luca's voice again. "Carlo handles that, same as always. By the time anyone pieces it together, the trail's cold." Silence. Then, "And the prosecutor's office. They'll replace her. They always do. But it takes time. Time we can use. The Carlotti case falls apart without her testimony, and we're clear." "What if someone talks?" Dominic laughed. It was a terrible sound. Not cruel, just empty. The laugh of someone who'd stopped believing consequences applied to him. "Nobody talks," he said. "That's why we're still here." Celeste pulled away from the wall, moved down the hallway on legs that barely held her weight. She made it to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the floor with her back against the wall. Her mind was screaming. They were going to murder someone. Casually, clinically, the same way Celeste planned her grocery shopping. And if she tried to stop them, she'd be next. She thought of Maya waiting for her at school pickup. Maya who believed her mother was safe, that the world made sense, that good things happened to people who worked hard and told the truth. What would Maya do without her? The bathroom tiles were cold against her palms. She focused on that sensation, solid, real, grounding. Breathed until her heartbeat slowed from panic to merely terrified. She still had 3 days. That was something. 3 days to figure out how to save Simone Pierce without destroying her own life. She just had no idea how. That night, Celeste barely touched her dinner. Maya noticed. "Mama, you okay?" "Just tired, baby." "You're always tired." Celeste forced a smile. "That's what happens when you're a grown-up." Maya frowned, the expression so serious it hurt to look at. "When I'm a grown-up, I'm not going to be tired. I'm going to be a dancer and sleep until noon." "That sounds perfect." After Maya fell asleep, Celeste sat on their tiny balcony and stared at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Simone Pierce was probably working late, reviewing case files, believing she was safe, believing the system she served would protect her. Somewhere out there, Dominic Marchetti was sleeping soundly, confident that his money and power made him untouchable. And here was Celeste, caught between them. Invisible except when she mattered most. She thought about her mother's words, about survival, about how the world punished black women for trying to be heroes. But maybe, Celeste thought, maybe sometimes you had to try anyway, even if it cost you everything. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray. Celeste woke with a decision crystallizing in her chest, sharp and terrifying and absolutely clear. She was going to contact Simone Pierce directly. Not the police, who might ask too many questions. Not a tip line, which might get ignored. But the woman herself. If Simone Pierce had survived 6 months of prosecuting the mob, she knew how to protect herself. She had resources, security, people who could act without leaving Celeste exposed. The plan was simple. Maybe too simple. But sometimes simplicity was all you had when every complex option led to disaster. She'd call the district attorney's office Monday morning, ask to speak to Pierce directly, say she had information about a credible threat, nothing more until she knew she was speaking to the right person. One call, anonymous, from a burner phone she'd buy with cash. Then she'd disappear from Dominic's life. Quit with 2 weeks' notice. Something believable. Family emergency. Daughter's health. Relocating to another city. Give him no reason to connect her departure to the warning Pierce received. It wasn't foolproof. But it was something. She spent the weekend in a strange, dissociative calm, took Maya to the park, made pancakes shaped like cats, read bedtime stories with exaggerated voices that made her daughter giggle, memorized the sound of the laugh, the weight of Maya's body curled against hers on the couch, the trust in her eyes when she said, "I love you, Mama," just in case. Sunday evening, she bought the burner phone, a corner store 3 neighborhoods over, paid cash, didn't make eye contact with the clerk, walked home with it heavy in her pocket like a grenade. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept rehearsing the call in her mind, what she'd say, how she'd say it, trying to sound credible without revealing too much, trying to save a life without ending her own. Monday morning, she dropped Maya at school and walked to a coffee shop 4 blocks away, bought a latte she didn't drink, and sat at a table near the window where she could watch the street. It was 8:47 a.m. when she dialed the district attorney's office. "District attorney's office? How may I direct your call?" Celeste's mouth was dry. "Simone Pierce, please. May I ask who's calling?" "It's about an urgent matter, a security concern." A pause. "Hold, please." The hold music was classical. Vivaldi, maybe. It felt obscene, this pleasant, civilized melody while Celeste sat on the edge of destroying everything. "This is Simone Pierce." The voice was exactly as Celeste remembered from news clips, confident, precise, the voice of someone who'd learned to command rooms full of hostile men. Celeste almost hung up. "Hello?" Impatience creeping in now. "Ms. Pierce, Celeste's voice cracked. She started again. "I have information about a threat against you, a credible threat. Tuesday morning, 7:15, Cafe Morelli." Silence. Then, "Who is this?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is, if you have information about a threat, you need to come in, make a formal statement. We'll protect you." I can't do that. You need to change your routine. Don't go to that cafe Tuesday morning. Don't take your son to school the usual way, please." "How do you know about my son?" Celeste's stomach dropped. She'd said too much. I just know. Please, you have to believe me. They have your schedule, your patterns. They've been watching you for weeks. Who's they? I can't. I'm sorry, I can't say. But you're in danger. Real danger. Please. She heard Simone breathing, thinking. When she spoke again, her voice was colder. If you're involved in a conspiracy to harm me, and you're calling to cover your tracks, you should know we record all calls. If something happens to me or my family, this conversation will be evidence. No, you don't understand. Then help me understand. Come in. Talk to me in person. I can protect you. You can't protect me from these people. Nobody can. Celeste hung up, removed the SIM card with shaking hands, broke it in half, dropped the pieces in separate trash cans as she walked back to her car. She'd done it, warned her. That had to be enough. But as she drove home, a terrible certainty settled over her like fog. She'd revealed too much. The detail about the sun, the specific time and place. Someone smart, and Simone Pierce was very smart, could work backward from those details, could figure out who had access to that information. And there weren't many people in Dominic Marchetti's inner circle. Actually, there was only one person who moved through his house unnoticed, who had access to locked offices, who existed in the background of his life like furniture. Celeste had just marked herself for death. She parked outside her apartment building and sat in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the panic. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe Pierce would take the warning seriously, change her routine, and nothing would connect back to Celeste. Maybe her phone rang, her real phone, unknown number. She stared at it, pulse hammering. Let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Answered. Hello? Ms. Johnson? A woman's voice, professional. This is Detective Sarah Chen with the District Attorney's Task Force. I'm calling because we received some concerning information this morning, and we'd like to speak with you about your employment with Dominic Marchetti. The world tilted. I don't know what you're talking about. Ms. Johnson, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you come in voluntarily, we have a conversation, and we figure out how to keep you safe. The hard way is we show up at your home, which might attract attention you don't want, your choice. Celeste closed her eyes. How did you get my name? Ms. Pierce is very good at what she does. Also, you're one of 3 people with access to Marchetti's office. The other 2 are family, process of elimination. I need to pick up my daughter from school. We'll send someone with you, plain clothes. You won't even know they're there. What time? 3 o'clock. Done. Can you come in at 4? I'll text you the address. It's not the main office. Somewhere discreet. If I come in, what happens? That depends on what you tell us. And if I don't come in, Detective Chen's voice softened. Then Simone Pierce dies on Tuesday, and you spend the rest of your life knowing you could have stopped it. Your call. The line went dead. Celeste sat in her car until her hands stopped shaking enough to drive. The safe house was a nondescript apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant in a neighborhood Celeste had never been to. Detective Chen met her in the stairwell, mid-40s, Asian, with the kind of tired eyes that suggested she'd seen too much and was done being surprised by human cruelty. Maya was with a social worker at an ice cream shop 2 blocks away, promised a sundae and a movie on someone's tablet. Supervised. Safe. But still, Celeste's heart felt like it might crack every time she thought of her daughter waiting, confused, asking when Mama would be back. The apartment was sparse, folding table, metal chairs, recording equipment. Simone Pierce stood by the window, arms crossed, watching Celeste with an expression that might have been calculation or might have been respect. "Thank you for coming in," Pierce said. "Did I have a choice?" "Everyone has a choice. You made yours this morning when you called." Celeste sat, folded her hands on the table to keep them from trembling. "If I talk to you, what happens to my daughter?" "We protect her," Detective Chen said, sitting across from Celeste. "And you. That's non-negotiable." "How?" "Witness protection if necessary, relocation, new identities. But first, we need to understand what you know." Celeste looked at Simone Pierce. "You believe me? About Tuesday? I've survived this long by not ignoring warnings. Yes, I believe you. Now tell me everything." So Celeste told them. About the open drawer, the folder, the photographs and surveillance logs and the handwritten note detailing the hit. About overhearing Dominic and Luca discussing the murder like it was a business meeting. About the plan to kill Pierce's mother a week later, to eliminate anyone who might push for justice. She told them about the journalist, Marcus Webb, and the hit and run that was never solved. About the federal case that fell apart. About 11 months of cleaning a house that smelled like lemon oil and death. When she finished, the room was silent. Simone Pierce looked like she'd swallowed glass. "My mother," she said quietly. "They were going to kill my mother. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. You just saved her life." Pierce moved from the window, sat down across from Celeste. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to record your statement, everything you told us, in detail. You're going to testify before a grand jury, and we're going to take Dominic Marchetti down. I can't testify. If I testify, I'm dead. If you don't testify, someone else dies, probably me. Definitely other people he's hurt or will hurt. You understand that, right? This isn't just about keeping yourself safe anymore." Celeste's eyes burned. "I have a daughter. I have a son." Pierce's voice was steel wrapped in exhaustion. "I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do. I'm asking you to be brave enough to finish what you started." "Brave?" Celeste laughed, but it came out broken. "I'm not brave. I'm terrified." "Brave people are always terrified. That's what makes it brave." Detective Chen leaned forward. "Ms. Johnson, listen to me. We can protect you. Full immunity for anything you might have inadvertently witnessed or been involved in. New identities, financial assistance, counseling, education funds for your daughter. We take care of our witnesses." "And how many of your witnesses are still alive?" Chen didn't flinch. "All of them, in this jurisdiction. 100% success rate. I don't make promises I can't keep." Celeste looked at the recording equipment, at Pierce's tired, determined face, at Detective Chen's steady gaze. She thought about Maya, about the future she'd been trying to build, one cleaned house at a time, about the question her daughter would ask someday, "Who was my mother?" And she thought about what kind of answer she wanted to give. "Okay," she said, "I'll testify." The recording took 3 hours. They walked her through everything, asked her to repeat details, clarify timelines. They showed her photographs. Was this Luca? Was this the car she'd seen in the driveway? Could she identify Dominic's handwriting on the note? Yes, yes, yes. When they finished, Pierce stood. "Thank you, truly, you're doing the right thing." "Am I?" Celeste's voice was hollow. "Because it doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm destroying my life." "You're transforming it. That's different." "Easy for you to say." Pierce smiled, and it was sad and knowing. "I'm black. I'm a woman. I've spent my career prosecuting men who think they're untouchable. You think any of this has been easy? You think I don't wake up every morning wondering if this is the day someone finally gets me? Then why do it? Because someone has to. Because if people like us don't stand up, then men like Marchetti win. They keep winning, and the world gets a little darker." Celeste stood. "I need to see my daughter." "Of course. Detective Chen will take you. We'll have officers watching your building tonight. Tomorrow, we'll start the relocation process." "Relocation? You can't go back to your apartment, Ms. Johnson. As of this moment, you're under our protection. That means moving fast." The room tilted again. "But Maya's school, her piano lessons, her friends." "I know, I'm sorry, but staying put means risking both your lives. We'll make the transition as smooth as possible." Celeste wanted to scream, to throw something, to take back the phone call, the decision, the moment she'd opened that drawer and seen what she shouldn't have seen. But she couldn't. Time only moved forward, even when forward felt like falling. Detective Chen drove her to the ice cream shop. Maya was at a corner table, chocolate smeared on her face, watching a cartoon on a tablet. When she saw Celeste, she lit up. "Mama, I got extra whipped cream." Celeste pulled her into her arms and held on like Maya was the only real thing in the world. "You okay, Mama?" Maya pulled back, concerned. "You're squeezing really tight." "I'm okay, baby. Just missed you." "I missed you too. Can we go home now?" Celeste looked at Detective Chen, who nodded. "Yeah," Celeste said. "Let's go home." She didn't tell Maya it was the last time they'd ever see that apartment. That night, while Maya slept, Celeste packed their lives into 4 suitcases. She was allowed 4 suitcases for witness protection. Everything else would be donated or sold. She held Maya's baby blanket, the one her mother had crocheted, held photographs of her mother, her grandmother, ancestors she'd never known but whose blood ran in her veins, held the cheap jewelry she'd collected, the books she'd meant to read, the life she'd been building with such careful hope. 4 suitcases. She packed Maya's stuffed animals first, her daughter's piano books, the sundress she loved, then her own essentials, documents, clothes, the bare necessities of survival. Everything else she left behind. At 3 a.m., she sat on the balcony one last time, watched the city lights blur through her tears, thought about the person she'd been yesterday, invisible, scared, but safe. That person was gone now. In her place was someone new, someone who'd chosen to be visible, someone who'd chosen truth over safety. She didn't feel brave, she felt broken. But maybe, she thought, maybe sometimes those were the same thing. 6 months later, Celeste stood in a kitchen that wasn't hers, making breakfast for a daughter who now answered to a different name. They lived in Oregon now. Small town, green mountains, rain that fell soft and constant like the world was perpetually exhaling. The house was modest, 2 bedrooms, a yard, with a swing. Set, neighbors who waved but didn't ask too many questions. Maya, who was now called Sophie, had adjusted better than Celeste expected. New school, new friends, a piano teacher who said she had real talent. She asked about their old apartment sometimes, about friends she'd left behind. Celeste told her they'd moved for Mama's work, which was technically true, just not the work Maya thought. The trial had been brief. With Celeste's testimony, the surveillance logs and phone records Detective Chen's team had subpoenaed, the case against Dominic Marchetti was ironclad. He'd tried to look confident during sentencing, tried to maintain that aura of untouchable power. But when the judge said 25 years to life, something in his face cracked. His eyes had found Celeste in the courtroom, and in that moment, she'd seen not anger, but something worse, betrayal, as if she'd violated some unspoken rule of their relationship, as if invisibility had been a contract and she'd broken it. She'd held his gaze until he looked away. Luca had taken a plea deal, 15 years in exchange for testimony against 3 other crime families. The web of corruption they'd uncovered went deeper than anyone expected. Judges, cops, city council members, all of them compromised, all of them now facing their own reckonings. Simone Pierce had been promoted. Federal prosecutor now, taking on cases across the entire state. She'd sent Celeste a card when they'd settled into the new house. "Thank you for your courage. You saved more lives than you'll ever know." Celeste had put the card in a drawer, looked at it sometimes when the nightmares got bad. Because they did get bad. Nights when she'd wake in a cold sweat, certain she'd heard footsteps in the hallway. Certain someone had found them. Certain her decision to speak up had marked Maya for death instead of saving anyone. She went to therapy twice a week. PTSD, the counselor said. Trauma from feeling unsafe for so long, then choosing to make herself even more unsafe. It would take time to heal. Celeste was learning that healing wasn't linear. Some days she felt strong. Some days she could barely get out of bed. Some days she hated herself for destroying their life. Some days she was proud. Most days she just felt tired. Maya called from the living room. "Mama, I can't find my piano book." "Sophie, honey," Celeste corrected gently. They had to be careful, even here, even after 6 months. "And it's on the coffee table." "Oh, thanks," Celeste smiled, flipped the pancakes, watched steam rise from the griddle, and wondered if Dominic Marchetti ever thought about her. If he sat in his cell and remembered the woman who'd cleaned his house, who'd been invisible until the exact moment it mattered. She wondered if he'd learned anything. If powerful men ever did, probably not. The doorbell rang. Celeste froze. Her pulse spiked. The spatula slipped from her hand, clattered against the stove. "I'll get it." Maya, Sophie, was already running to the door. "Wait," but Maya had already opened it. Celeste's vision tunneled. Her legs moved automatically, carrying her toward the door, toward her daughter, ready to put herself between Maya and whatever threat had finally found them. But it wasn't a threat. It was a delivery person, holding a package. "Morning, package for Johnson?" Celeste exhaled, forced her voice steady. "That's me. Sign here?" She signed with shaking hands, took the package, closed the door. Maya was staring at her. "Mama, you okay? You look scared." "I'm fine, baby, just surprised." "It's just the mailman." I know. Go wash your hands for breakfast." After Maya left, Celeste leaned against the door, pressed her forehead to the wood, and breathed. In, out, in, out. This was her life now, jumping at doorbells, checking over her shoulder, teaching her daughter to answer to a name that wasn't hers. But Maya was alive, safe, growing up in a town where she could walk to school without fear, where she could be a kid without living in the shadow of violence. And Simone Pierce was alive. Her son was alive. Her mother was alive. Sometimes Celeste thought about the journalist, Marcus Webb, about the hit and run that was never solved, about the silence that had followed his death, all those people who'd known something but said nothing. She'd broken that silence. She'd paid for it, was still paying, would probably pay for the rest of her life. But she'd done it anyway. Later that morning, after Maya left for school, Celeste sat on the porch with coffee and watched the rain. Oregon rain was different than city rain, softer, more patient. It didn't pound the earth. It settled on it like a blessing. Her phone buzzed. Text from Detective Chen, who checked in monthly. "How are you holding up?" Celeste typed back. "Some days are harder than others. Today's okay. That's all any of us can ask for. How's Pierce? Thriving, taking down bad guys, being a pain in the ass for all the right reasons." Celeste smiled. "Good. Listen, I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but you're a hero. You know that, right?" Celeste stared at the message. Thought about heroes, about the stories Maya loved, where heroes were strong and fearless and always knew the right thing to do. She wasn't that. She was scared. She'd hesitated. She'd only acted because not acting felt worse than dying. But maybe that was enough. She typed, "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who did what I had to do. That's what heroes are." Celeste set the phone down, finished her coffee, watched the rain transform the street into something clean and new. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, the one who'd learned to be invisible, who'd believed safety came from not being seen. That woman had thought survival meant silence. She'd been wrong. Survival meant speaking, even when your voice shook, even when speaking cost you everything. Inside the house, the phone rang. Maya's school, probably. Calling about pickup time or some permission slip. Celeste stood, stretched, felt her bones protest. She was 32, but felt older, the kind of older that comes from carrying weight most people never see. She walked inside, answered the phone, scheduled the appointment or signed the form, or did whatever small, mundane thing was required, and then she got ready for her shift at the local library where she worked now, shelving books, helping patrons find stories, living quietly in a small town where nobody knew her real name or where she'd come from or what she'd done. Invisible again. But different this time, because now she knew. Invisibility was a choice, and sometimes the most important thing you could do was choose to be seen. Even if it cost you everything you'd built, even if it meant your daughter grew up somewhere else, with a different name, a different story, even if it meant carrying fear in your bones for the rest of your life. Because on the other side of fear was something Maya would understand someday, when she was old enough to hear the truth. On the other side of fear was the knowledge that when the moment came, when the choice appeared, when the world asked what you were made of, you didn't look away. You did what was right, even when right felt impossible. Especially then.